Captain Veltar moved his four thin legs across the bridge of the mining ship Kethvar. His crystalline shell caught the light from the main screen, which showed the asteroid field they had been working in for 3 months. The rocks here contained rare metals that his people needed to build their cities on distant worlds. The Zilani were a peaceful race. They looked like large insects with clear, hard shells and delicate limbs. They had never fought a war in their long history. Why would they? The galaxy was big enough for everyone, and there were plenty of resources to share. Veltar's ship carried 200 crew members, including families. The Zilani believed that work should not separate families, so children often traveled with their parents on long mining missions. The ship had schools, gardens, and play areas. It was more like a floating town than a military vessel. Captain called Zethlin from the communications station. Her voice had a musical quality that all Zilani possessed. "We're picking up some strange energy readings." Veltar walked over to look at her screen. The readings showed massive objects moving toward them from the edge of the system. The signatures were unlike anything he had seen before. They were too big to be asteroids and too organized to be natural. "How many contacts?" Veltar asked, though he already feared the answer. 12 large vessels, sir. They're moving in formation and will reach us in 15 minutes. The bridge fell silent. Formation flying meant intelligence. Intelligence meant someone was coming to find them on purpose. In this remote part of space, that was rarely good news. Veltar's shell began to darken, a sign of stress in his species. He activated the ship's general communication system. "All crew members, please secure your work areas and return to your quarters. This is not a drill." The main screen flickered and showed the approaching ships more clearly. They were long, dark vessels with sharp edges and weapon ports along their sides. Veltar recognized the design from intelligence reports he wished he had never read. "Korvaxi Dominion warships," he whispered. The Korvaxi were everything the Zilani were not. They were large, reptilian creatures with thick scales and powerful muscles. Their empire had grown by conquering weaker species and forcing them into slavery. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. "Sir, they're sending a message," Zethlin reported. "Put it on screen." The image that appeared made several crew members step backward. The Korvaxi commander was huge, with red scales and yellow eyes. Scars covered his face and neck, each one probably representing a battle won. "Zilani vessel," the alien said in a deep, harsh voice. "I am Warlord Krexva of the Dominion Fleet. You will prepare to be boarded. Your ship and crew are now property of the Korvaxi Empire." Veltar found his voice. "This is Captain Veltar. We are peaceful miners operating in unclaimed space. We have committed no crimes against your people." The warlord's laugh was like grinding metal. "Crime? You exist. That is crime enough. You will submit now, or we will take your ship by force. Either way, you belong to us." The screen went dark. Around the bridge, Veltar's crew looked at him with fear in their large, compound eyes. They all knew stories about Korvaxi slave ships. Families were separated. Individuals worked to death in mines and factories, and entire cultures were erased. "Sir," the weapons officer said quietly, "our mining lasers might damage one of their ships, but we cannot fight 12 warships." Veltar nodded. The Kethvar had no real weapons. Mining equipment could be dangerous, but it was not designed for combat. Even if they could hurt one Korvaxi ship, the others would destroy them. "Captain," Zethlin called out, "I'm detecting boarding. Pods launching from the enemy ships. They'll reach us in 8 minutes. Veltar's mind raced. He could surrender and hope the Korvaxi would be merciful, but he knew they would not be. He could try to run, but the Korvaxi ships were faster. He could fight, but that would only get his people killed more quickly. Then he remembered something from his academy training years ago. There were stories, legends really, about other species in the galaxy. Species that lived on worlds so dangerous that survival made them incredibly strong and aggressive. Most civilized races avoided these deathworlder species. "Zethlin," he said suddenly, "open all communication channels, include the restricted frequencies." "Sir, those channels are for emergencies only, and most lead to deathworlder space, I know. Do it." Zethlyn's claws clicked across her controls. All channels open, sir. Veltar took a deep breath. He was about to call for help from creatures that might be as dangerous as the Korvaxi. But what choice did he have? This is Zilani mining vessel Kethvar broadcasting on all frequencies, he said clearly. We are under attack by Korvaxi Dominion forces. Our position is in the Kepler 442 system, asteroid belt coordinates 445.7 by 128.3. We are a peaceful vessel, with 200 crew members aboard, including women and children. Any ships in range, please assist. We have minutes before we are boarded. He repeated the message twice more, then waited. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's systems and the distant sound of children playing in the family quarters below. Boarding pods will reach us in 4 minutes, Zethlyn reported. Veltar began to prepare for the worst. He activated the ship's self-destruct sequence but did not arm it yet. If surrender meant slavery for his people, destruction might be kinder. Sir. Zethlyn's voice was excited. I'm receiving a response. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything Veltar had ever heard. It was calm but carried an undertone of controlled danger, like the low growl of a predator. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Valkyrie. We're inbound, on your position. Hold tight and keep your people away from your outer hull sections. Veltar felt hope and terror at the same time. Help was coming, but it was coming from Deathworlders. He had just invited apex predators to a fight with other apex predators, and his people were caught in the middle. How long until the human ship arrives? He asked Zethlyn. Unknown, sir. I cannot detect them on our sensors yet. Boarding pods making contact with our hull, the tactical officer reported. They're cutting through the airlock doors. Through the ship's internal speakers, Veltar could hear the sound of metal being cut, and the heavy footsteps of Korvaxi soldiers entering his ship. His people were trapped between two forces that could both destroy them easily. All he could do now was wait and hope that the Deathworlders who answered his call were the kind that protected, rather than the kind that conquered. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Valkyrie, watching the stars streak past as his ship pushed through hyperspace. Around him, his crew worked with the focused calm that came from years of training and combat experience. The Valkyrie was 2 kilometers of human engineering at its finest. Her hull was made of adaptive armor that could shift and strengthen where needed. Her weapons could level cities, and her shields could withstand the fury of a star. But more than the technology, it was her crew of 2,000 humans that made her truly dangerous. Morrison was a tall man with gray hair and steady hands. He had been fighting in space for 20 years, protecting human colonies and trade routes from pirates and hostile aliens. He had seen enough war to know when it was necessary and when it was not. Sir, called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the tactical station. We're receiving that distress signal again. The Zilani ship is still broadcasting. Morrison nodded. The message had been clear enough. A peaceful mining ship was under attack by the Korvaxi Dominion. The Korvaxi were well known to human intelligence services. They were slavers and bullies who attacked anyone they thought was weak. Commander Clark, Morrison said to his chief engineer, how long until we reach their position? Ryan Clark was a short, stocky man whose hands were always dirty, from working on the ship's engines. He could make the Valkyrie do things that should have been impossible, and he had never met a problem he could not solve with enough power and creativity. If I push the quantum drives to 110%, we can be there in 12 minutes, Clark replied. But sir, that's beyond safe operating limits. Do it, Clark grinned. Pushing machines past their limits was his favorite part of the job. Aye, sir. I'll give you everything she's got. The ship's engines roared louder as Clark fed more power into them. The Valkyrie leaped forward through space like a hunting wolf. That had caught a scent. Lieutenant Amy Brooks looked up from her weapons console. She was a small woman with quick fingers and quicker reflexes. Her job was to make sure that when the Valkyrie fought, the enemy stopped existing. Sir, should I begin charging the main batteries? She asked. Yes. Full combat load, kinetic rounds, and directed energy weapons. What about the Korvaxi? Asked Lieutenant Kim. Intelligence says they usually travel in large groups. Morrison smiled without humor. Then we'll have more targets. The crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had fought pirates, raiders, and even other human ships that had gone rogue. But this was different. This time, they were racing to save innocents from slavery and death. Dr. Lisa Martinez, the ship's chief medical officer, entered the bridge. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and skilled hands. She had treated everything from laser burns to alien diseases, and she never gave up on a patient. "Jake," she said, using his first name as she always did. "I've prepared Medical Bay 2 for alien physiology. If these Zilani are hurt, we'll need to work fast to figure out how to help them." "Good thinking, Lisa." "Amy, what's our weapons status?" "Lieutenant." Brooks checked her displays. "All weapons charged and ready, sir. I've loaded armor-piercing rounds for their shields and explosive rounds for their hulls. Whatever those Korvaxi ships are made of, we can break it." The bridge hummed with controlled energy. Every person there knew their job and trusted the others to do theirs. They had trained together, fought together, and bled together. They were more than a crew. They were family. "Commander Clark?" Morrison called to engineering. "Can you give me a full sensor sweep when we drop out of hyperspace? I want to know exactly what we're facing." "Already working on it, sir. I've boosted the sensor array to maximum power. When we arrive, we'll see everything down to the screws on their hull plates." Morrison walked to the center of the bridge and looked at the tactical display. It showed their course and destination, but it also showed something else. It showed the position of human colonies, trade routes, and patrol areas. The Zilani ship was far from any of those, in empty space where no human had reason to be. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim said quietly, "why are we doing this? These aliens aren't our allies. We don't owe them anything." Morrison turned to look at her. Kim was young and sometimes asked the questions that older crew members just understood. "Sarah, what's the first rule of being human?" "Sir, we protect those who cannot protect themselves. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or stranger. If someone calls for help and we can answer, we answer." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Lieutenant Brooks spoke up. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. Multiple large vessels in formation." "How many?" 12 contacts, sir. They're big ones. Battlecruiser class at least." Morrison felt his pulse quicken, but his voice remained calm. 12-1. "I've had worse odds." Commander Clark's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering. "Sir, we'll be dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds. All systems are running. Hot, but they're stable." "All hands, battle stations," Morrison announced shipwide. "This is not a drill. We have friendly civilians under attack by hostile forces. We will engage and destroy the enemy. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and watch out for each other." Throughout the ship, 2,000 humans prepared for war. In the fighter bays, pilots ran to their ships. In the weapons sections, gunners loaded ammunition. In engineering, technicians rerouted power to combat systems. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3, 2, 1. Mark. The stars stopped streaking and became steady points of light. Ahead of them, the tactical display lit up with contacts. 12 large Korvaxi warships surrounded a much smaller vessel that was clearly the Zilani mining ship. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim reported, "the Zilani ship has been boarded. I'm reading Korvaxi life signs inside their hull." Morrison's jaw tightened. They were not too late to save the Zilani, but it would be close. "Open a channel to the Korvaxi commander." "Channel open, sir." The main screen flickered and showed a large reptilian face covered in scars. The creature's yellow eyes showed surprise when it saw Morrison. "I am Warlord Krexva of the Korvaxi Dominion," the alien said. "You are trespassing in Dominion space. Human, leave now or be destroyed." Morrison stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. When he spoke, his voice was calm and certain. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Valkyrie. You are ordered to withdraw from the system immediately and release the Zilani vessel and all its crew members." Krexva's laugh was like grinding metal. "Foolish deathworlder. You are outnumbered 12-1. Your single ship cannot stand against my fleet." Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "You have 10 seconds to comply." The alien's eyes widened with surprise, then narrowed with anger. "You dare threaten me? Destroy that ship." Morrison turned to his weapons. "Officer." "Amy, you heard him. Light them up." The Valkyrie opened fire and space erupted in violence. Lieutenant Amy Brooks pressed her firing controls with the precision of a concert pianist. The ship's main guns spoke with voices of thunder, sending streams of superheated plasma and armor-piercing projectiles toward the Korvaxi fleet. The first salvo caught the enemy completely off guard. 2 Korvaxi battlecruisers simply vanished in balls of fire and metal fragments. A third lost its entire front section and began spinning helplessly through space, bleeding atmosphere and crew into the void. Direct hits on targets 1, 2, and 3. Brooks reported with satisfaction. Targets 1 and 2 are destroyed. Target 3 is crippled. Captain Morrison watched the tactical display with calm eyes. The Korvaxi had expected an easy fight against a single human ship. They were learning that humans did not give easy fights to anyone. "Evasive maneuvers," Morrison ordered. "Don't let them surround us." The Valkyrie moved like a hunting cat despite her massive size. Commander Clark had pushed the engines past their safety limits, and the ship danced between enemy fire with impossible grace. Korvaxi energy beams that should have struck home passed harmlessly through empty space. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim called from tactical, "the remaining Korvaxi ships are moving to attack formation. They're trying to box us in." "Let them try." "Amy, target their engines. I want them dead in space." Brooks grinned as she selected targets. The Korvaxi ships were large and powerful, but they were also slow and predictable. Human weapons technology had been designed for fighting faster, smarter enemies than these reptilian bullies. The Valkyrie's secondary guns joined the fight. Kinetic rounds accelerated to significant fractions of light speed hammered into Korvaxi hulls. The enemy shields held for a few seconds, then collapsed under the fury of human engineering. Another Korvaxi ship exploded, its reactor containment failing under sustained fire. The remaining 8 ships began to spread out, trying to attack the human Dreadnought from multiple angles at once. "They're learning," Morrison observed. "Good, I was getting bored." Commander Clark's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Sir, I'm rerouting power from life support to weapons and shields. We've got about 20 minutes of air left, but our guns will hit twice as hard." Morrison nodded. Only humans would willingly suffocate themselves to get more firepower. It was exactly the kind of crazy decision that made them so dangerous in combat. The bridge crew worked without breathing apparatus, their lungs burning as the air grew thin, but their hands remained steady on their controls, and their aim never wavered. Pain was temporary, victory was forever. "Target 4 is moving to ram us," Kim reported. Morrison watched the tactical display as one Korvaxi ship accelerated directly toward them. It was a desperate move, but it might work if the human ship could not get out of the way in time. "Amy, full spread on target 4. Everything we have." Brooks unleashed the full fury of the Valkyrie's weapon systems. Plasma cannons, particle, beams, and kinetic rounds all converged on the charging Korvaxi ship. The enemy vessel's shields flared and died. Its armor melted and vaporized. But it kept coming, its crew willing to die if they could take the human ship with them. The Korvaxi battlecruiser struck the Valkyrie shields at tremendous speed. Energy fields designed to stop planet-killer weapons groaned under the impact. Sparks flew from control panels on the bridge and the lights flickered, but the shields held. The Korvaxi ship, already damaged by human weapons, shattered like glass against the human vessel's defenses. Metal fragments bounced harmlessly off the Valkyrie's hull. "Shield generators at 60%, Kim reported. "But we're still in the fight." Morrison smiled grimly. 7 ships left. The odds were getting better. Warlord Krexiva's face appeared on the main screen again. The reptilian commander's earlier confidence had been replaced by fear and fury. "What are you?" he snarled. "No single ship should be able to fight like this." Morrison looked at the alien with cold eyes. "We're humans. We come from a world where everything tries to kill us from the day we're born. We learned to fight back." The remaining Korvaxi ships were retreating now, pulling back from the human Dreadnought. But Morrison was not going to let them escape. These were slavers and murderers. If he let them go, they would just find other victims. Pursue them, he ordered. Don't let any of them get away. The Valkyrie chased after the fleeing Korvaxi ships like a wolf hunting deer. Her weapons reached out across vast distances, picking off the enemy vessels one by one. The Korvaxi ships were fast, but human targeting computers were faster. Another explosion lit up space as Target 5 died. Target 6 lasted a few seconds longer before its reactor overloaded. Target 7 tried to hide behind an asteroid, but human sensors could track a coin in a hurricane. Within minutes, only 3 Korvaxi ships remained. They had stopped trying to fight and were running as fast as their engines could carry them, but they were not fast enough. Brooks methodically destroyed them, her weapons striking with surgical precision. Each shot was placed exactly where it would do the most damage. The Korvaxi fleet that had arrived to enslave the Zilani was reduced to glowing debris and expanding clouds of gas. All targets destroyed, Brooks reported. Space is clear. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Well done, everyone. Clark, restore life support. Kim, scan for survivors. Fresh air began flowing through the bridge again as the life support systems came back online. The crew took deep breaths, their faces flushed from oxygen deprivation but their spirits high from victory. Sir, Kim said after studying her sensors, I'm not reading any Korvaxi life signs, but the Zilani ship is still intact. They have survivors aboard. Morrison felt relief wash over him. They had been in time. The Zilani miners were alive. Open a channel to the Zilani vessel. The face that appeared on screen was insectoid but clearly showing relief and gratitude. Captain Veltar's crystalline shell was cracked in several places, and his compound eyes were wide with amazement. This is Captain Veltar of the Kethvar, the alien said in his musical voice. We cannot thank you enough. You saved our lives. Morrison smiled, and this time it was warm and genuine. That's what neighbors do for each other, Captain. Are your people hurt? We have medical facilities that can help. Veltar's shell brightened with surprise. You would help us further? But you have already done so much, Captain. We're not going anywhere until we know you and your crew are safe. Prepare to receive a boarding party. We're coming over to check on your people and help with repairs. As Morrison prepared to visit the alien ship, he reflected on what had just happened. 12 Korvaxi warships had attacked a peaceful mining vessel. A single human dreadnought had answered the call for help and destroyed the entire enemy fleet. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humans. They were not conquerors or empire builders. They were protectors, and they were very, very good at their job. Captain Morrison stepped through the airlock onto the Zilani mining ship, followed by Dr. Martinez and a team of human engineers. The corridors were smaller than those on human ships, designed for the delicate insectoid race that lived here. First thing that struck Morrison was how peaceful everything looked. The walls were decorated with art made from crystalline formations. Soft music played from hidden speakers. Even after the attack, this felt more like a floating garden than a starship. Captain Veltar met them at the airlock, accompanied by several of his crew. The Zilani captain was taller than Morrison had expected, but his movements were graceful rather than threatening. His crystalline shell caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. Captain Morrison, Veltar said, his voice carrying musical tones that human ears found pleasant. Welcome aboard the Kethvar. I wish our first meeting could have been under better circumstances. Morrison smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Veltar looked at it uncertainly for a moment, then reached out with one of his thin limbs. The handshake was gentle but firm. I'm glad we could help, Morrison said. How are your people? Are there any injuries? Veltar's shell darkened slightly, a sign of sadness among his species. We have wounded, but thankfully no deaths. The Korvaxi soldiers were rough when they boarded us. Several of our crew were hurt trying to protect the children. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, carrying her medical kit. She was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands. Captain Veltar, I'm Dr. Martinez. May I examine your wounded? Human medicine might be able to help. The Zilani captain's compound eyes widened with surprise. You would treat our people? But our biology is so different from yours. Martinez smiled. Different doesn't mean impossible. I've studied alien physiology for years. With your permission, I'd like to try. Veltar led them through the ship's corridors. They passed Zelani families huddled together, still frightened from the attack. The children were especially scared, their shells pale with fear. When they saw the humans in their armor, some of them hid behind their parents. Morrison noticed their reaction and made a decision. He reached up and removed his helmet, revealing his human face. His crew followed his example. The change in the aliens' reactions was immediate. Without the armor obscuring their faces, the humans looked less threatening. "It's okay," Morrison said gently to a group of Zelani children. "The bad aliens are gone. You're safe now." One brave child stepped forward. She was small even for a Zelani with a shell that sparkled like a diamond. "Are you really Deathworlders?" she asked in a tiny voice. Morrison knelt down to her level. "Some people call us that, but we prefer to think of ourselves as friends." The child's shell brightened with curiosity. "My teacher says Deathworlders are scary, but you don't look scary." "We're only scary to people who hurt others," Morrison replied. "To good people like you and your family, we're just friends who live far away." Dr. Martinez was already working with the wounded in the ship's medical bay. The Zelani doctor, an elderly male named Corthon, watched in amazement as she treated his patients. "This is remarkable," Corthon said as Martinez used a human tissue regenerator on a cracked shell. "Your technology works on our physiology." "Medical principles are often universal," Martinez explained as she worked. "Living tissue has similar needs across most species. Pain relief, infection prevention, tissue repair, these are common requirements." She had brought medical supplies from the Valkyrie, including portable equipment that could adapt to different alien biologies. Within an hour, she had treated all the wounded Zelani. Their injuries were healing faster than they had thought possible. Meanwhile, Commander Clark was working with the Zelani engineers to repair their damaged systems. The Korvaxi boarding had damaged several important components, and the ship's life support was running at reduced capacity. "Your power distribution system is interesting," Clark said to the chief Zelani engineer, a female named Sithara. "Very efficient. We could learn something from this design." Sithara's shell brightened with pride. "The Zelani have always focused on efficiency rather than power. We believe in working with technology, not forcing it." Clark nodded approvingly. "Smart philosophy. Here, let me show you something." He pulled out a human power coupling and began connecting it to the Zelani systems. "This should boost your efficiency by about 20%. "You're giving us your technology?" Sithara asked in surprise. "Why not? Good ideas should be shared. That's how everyone gets better." Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out. Human and Zelani crew members worked together, sharing knowledge and resources. The language barriers were overcome through translation devices and simple gestures. In the ship's main gathering area, Morrison found himself surrounded by curious Zelani. They wanted to know about humans and the world they came from. Their questions were endless. "Is it true that your planet tries to kill you?" asked one young adult. Morrison laughed. "Not exactly. Earth is dangerous, but it's also beautiful. We have storms that can level cities, animals that can eat a person in one bite, and diseases that can kill millions. But we also have sunsets that take your breath away and music that can make you cry." "How do you survive?" asked another. "We adapt, we learn, we help each other. No human survives alone on Earth. We need our families and friends to make it through each day." An elderly Zelani female named Lethana spoke up. "We heard that Deathworlders are violent and aggressive, that they conquer and destroy." Morrison's expression grew serious. "Some are, but violence and aggression are tools like any others. They can be used to destroy or they can be used to protect. Humans choose to protect." "But why?" asked the brave little girl who had spoken to him earlier. "Why do you protect people you don't even know?" Morrison smiled at her. "Because it's the right thing to do. Because we know what it's like to be afraid and helpless. Because in a dangerous galaxy, good people need to look out for each other. Captain Veltar, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. Captain Morrison, your people have shown us great kindness today. How can we repay you? Morrison shook his head. You don't owe us anything. But if you want to do something for us, just remember this day. Remember that when someone calls for help, good people answer. Dr. Martinez approached the group. Captain, all the wounded are stable. Their injuries should heal completely within a few days. And our ship? Veltar asked. Commander Clark appeared, wiping grease from his hands. Better than new, Captain. We've upgraded several of your systems and reinforced your hull. You should have no trouble making it home. The Zilani captain's shell brightened with gratitude. We cannot thank you enough. Please stay with us tonight. Let us prepare a meal for you. It's the least we can do. Morrison looked around at the friendly alien faces surrounding him. These were good people who had been through a terrible experience. If sharing a meal with humans would help them feel better, then that was the least he could do. We'd be honored, he said. That evening, the two crews shared food and stories. The Zilani prepared dishes made from crystalline fruits that tasted like music and felt like starlight. The humans shared ration packs that had been flavored to taste like earth foods. Children from both species played together, their laughter echoing through the ship's corridors. The human crew members told stories about Earth, while the Zilani shared tales of their beautiful crystal cities and floating gardens. As the evening wound down, the little Zilani girl who had first spoken to Morrison approached him one more time. Captain Morrison, she said shyly, when I grow up, I want to be like you. Morrison knelt down to her level again. What do you mean? I want to help people who are in trouble. I want to be brave like you. Morrison smiled and gently touched her crystalline hand. You already are brave, and you don't need to be like me. You just need to be like you, but grown up. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Captain Veltar pulled Morrison aside. Captain, he said quietly, this will not be forgotten. Word of what you did here today will spread throughout Zilani space and beyond. The galaxy will know that humans are friends to those who need friends. Morrison nodded. That's all we've ever wanted, Captain. To be good neighbors in a big galaxy. As the Valkyrie prepared to escort the Zilani ship to safety, Morrison reflected on the day's events. They had come here to fight a battle, but they had ended up making friends. Perhaps that was the most human thing of all. 3 weeks after the rescue of the Zilani mining ship, the galaxy was buzzing with news. The story had spread through quantum communication networks faster than anyone could have imagined. A single human ship had destroyed an entire Corvaxi fleet to save innocent aliens. More importantly, the humans had asked for nothing in return. Captain Veltar stood before the Zilani High Council on their crystal homeworld of Zeltara. The council chamber was a beautiful dome made entirely of living crystal that sang softly in harmony with the planet's magnetic field. 12 elderly Zilani, their shells gleaming with age and wisdom, listened as he gave his report. The humans were not what we expected, Veltar said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. They fought with incredible skill and power, but when the battle was over, they became healers and helpers. They treated our wounded, repaired our ship, and shared their food with our families. Council leader Methron, the oldest of the Zilani, leaned forward. Her shell was so old it had become nearly transparent, and her voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. You recommend we establish formal relations with these humans? She asked. More than that, Veltar replied. I recommend we invite them to join the Galactic Collective as friends and allies. They are warriors with the hearts of guardians. In a galaxy where the Corvaxi and others prey on the weak, we need friends like the humans. The Council voted unanimously to send a diplomatic mission to human space. Similar conversations were happening across dozens of peaceful civilizations as word of the rescue spread. Meanwhile, in the dark halls of the Corvaxi Empire, Warlord Krexva knelt before the Supreme Overlord, a massive reptilian creature whose scales were black as space and whose eyes burned like dying stars. You lost an entire fleet to one ship? The Overlord hissed, his voice like acid eating through metal. "Yes, my lord," Krexva replied, not daring to look up. "The humans fight like nothing we have ever encountered. They were willing to suffocate themselves to gain more firepower. They showed no fear, no hesitation. The Overlord's claws scraped against his throne of polished bone. And after they destroyed our ships, they rescued the Zilani, treated their wounded, and escorted them to safety. They took nothing for themselves." The chamber fell silent except for the sound of the Overlord's breathing. Finally, he spoke again. "These humans are dangerous. Not because they are conquerors, but because they are protectors. Word of this defeat is already spreading. Our subject species are beginning to whisper about hope." The Overlord was right. Across the Korvaxi Empire, enslaved species were sharing the story of the human rescue. In secret gatherings, they spoke of Deathworlders who came not to conquer, but to liberate. Rebellion was in the air. Aboard the UES Valkyrie, Captain Morrison was dealing with problems of his own. His communication system was flooded with messages from across the galaxy. Distress calls, requests for help, invitations to visit peaceful worlds, and offers of alliance were coming in faster than his crew could process them. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim reported from her station, "we've received 47 new distress calls in the last hour. Species I've never heard of are asking for our help." Morrison looked at the tactical display, which showed potential missions scattered across known space. Pirates threatening trade routes, slavers attacking colonies, and warlords oppressing peaceful species. The galaxy, it seemed, was full of bullies who had been operating without fear because no one was strong enough to stop them. "How many ships do we have in this sector?" Morrison asked. "Just us, sir. The nearest human fleet is 3 weeks away." Dr. Martinez entered the bridge carrying a data pad. "Jake, I've been analyzing these distress calls. Some of these species are in immediate danger. There's a group called the Vorthak who are threatening to exterminate an entire peaceful race called the Millions unless they surrender their homeworld." Morrison felt anger building in his chest. Extermination threats were exactly the kind of evil that humans would not tolerate. How long to reach their position? 2 days at maximum speed, Kim replied. "Set course. We're going to have a conversation. With these Vorthak." Commander Clark's voice came over the intercom. "Sir, if we keep responding to every distress call, we're going to burn out the engines. The Valkyrie is tough, but she's not designed for continuous combat operations." Morrison knew Clark was right, but he also knew they couldn't ignore people who needed help. He was about to respond when his communication officer received a priority message. "Sir, incoming transmission from Fleet Command. It's Admiral Thompson." The main screen flickered and showed the face of Admiral Kate Thompson, Morrison's superior officer. She was a stern woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. But when she looked at Morrison, there was pride in her expression. "Jake," she said without preamble, "I've been reading your reports. 1 ship against 12 Korvaxi battle cruisers? Either you're the luckiest man in the fleet, or you're getting better at this job." Morrison smiled. "A little of both, Admiral. But we have a problem. The distress calls are pouring in. Every peaceful species in the galaxy seems to think we can solve their problems." Thompson nodded. "That's why I'm calling. Fleet Command has been monitoring the situation. We're assembling a humanitarian task force, 12 dreadnoughts, support, vessels, and specialized crews trained for rescue operations." Morrison felt relief wash over him. "When will they arrive?" "They're already on their way. You'll have company within the week. In the meantime, I'm promoting you to Commodore. You'll command the task force when it arrives." "Admiral, I appreciate the promotion, but I don't know if I'm qualified to command that many ships." Thompson's expression grew serious. "Jake, you just proved that humans will risk everything to protect innocence. That's exactly the kind of leader we need for this mission. The galaxy is watching us now. We need to show them what humanity stands for." After the transmission ended, Morrison stood quietly on his bridge, thinking about what Thompson had said. The galaxy was watching. Every action they took now would shape how other species viewed humanity for generations to come. "Sir," Kim said softly. "Orders?" Morrison looked at the tactical display again, seeing not just threats and problems but opportunities to help and protect. We continue on course to the Million system. When the task force arrives, we'll coordinate our efforts. But until then, we do what we can with what we have. 2 days later, the Valkyrie dropped out of hyperspace near the Million homeworld. What they found was a beautiful blue-green planet surrounded by 15 ships that looked like floating fortresses. The Vorthak vessels were massive and ugly, designed to intimidate rather than to fight efficiently. The Vorthak commander, a creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a shark, appeared on the main screen when Morrison opened communications. "I am War Chief Gorthak of the Vorthak Empire," the alien snarled. "You will leave this system immediately or be destroyed." Morrison studied the creature's face, noting the cruel intelligence in its multiple eyes. "This is Commodore Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Valkyrie. You have 24 hours to withdraw from this system and leave the Million people in peace." Gorthak's laugh was like breaking glass. "One small ship threatens my entire fleet. You Deathworlders are even more insane than the stories claim." "We're not insane," Morrison replied calmly. "We're just very good at our job. Ask the Korvaxi if you don't believe me." The alien's expression changed as he processed Morrison's words. News of the Korvaxi defeat had spread far and wide. "You were responsible for that?" Gorthak asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. 24 hours, Morrison repeated, and cut the transmission. 18 hours later, the Vorthak fleet withdrew without firing a shot. The grateful Millions sent messages of thanks that brought tears to the eyes of Morrison's crew. 1 week after that, 12 human dreadnoughts arrived in the system, along with support ships, medical vessels, and specialized rescue craft. The task force was impressive, but Morrison knew it was just the beginning. Standing on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by officers from a dozen human worlds, Morrison looked out at the stars and thought about the future. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of good people who deserved to live in peace. His communication officer announced another incoming distress call. Morrison listened to the message, then turned to his task force commanders. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we have work to do." The human fleet moved out toward their next mission, carrying with them the hopes of peaceful species across the galaxy. They were no longer just explorers or traders. They had become something more important. They had become the guardians who answered when someone called for help. Word of their actions spread to every corner of known space. The galaxy's predators now understood a simple truth: hurt the innocent and the humans would come for you with everything they had. And for the first time in centuries, the innocent species of the galaxy slept peacefully, knowing that somewhere, in the darkness between the stars, their protectors were watching.